Leeah Joo, welcome to the Undraped Artist Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. I'm really excited.
Yeah, so am I. So, I've been following you for a while. Your work is amazing. I just have to tell you that. But lately, I've been working on a lot of fabrics. So I've been eyeballing your work.
Okay.
And yeah, because you're just the queen of fabric painting. You're so good at it. And you had said something in one of your videos on Instagram that when you go to museums and you see these historical paintings, you're always drawn to the fabric.
Yes,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and that's how I feel. And yet, as predominantly a figurative painter, I feel like I've neglected the fabric a little, even though every time I see these masterful paintings, I always tend to look at the fabric. But so I'm trying to sort of channel you a little bit in my work and get a little more dynamic fabric in my multi-figure work.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons I'm really excited to talk to you, because you're so good at it. I mean, geez Louise, they're just extraordinary.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I don't know if fabric should compete with the figure. I mean, your figures are amazing. So I don't know if you want
Oh, thanks.
that kind of elaborate, ornate drapery to overtake anything, away from the body. But
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's just some of those 19th century paintings where they have all those beautiful fabrics as costume. It's just great. But yeah, I'll have to be careful not to overdo it. That's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I
Yeah,
just
but
saw last year, was it? I saw the Sargent show in
mhm.
Boston, and it was all about the costume and how important the wardrobe was for his sitters. And it was really great because he would often work with designers, who were like amazing fashion designers at the time, costume designers for the opera, and then he would paint the actress, in that beautiful dress. And next to the painting, they had the actual dress, so you can see all of it in detail. So it was a really great show.
Oh man, the actual dress.
Yes, yes, for many of them. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Are you a big Sargent fan?
I am. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, definitely. When I was an undergrad, he was my. I wanted to be like Sargent. Who didn't want
Yeah.
to be like
Yeah. We
Sargent
all
at
kind
some
of want to be
point?
a little bit. Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is because one of the few times I've literally gotten emotional on a painting or in front of a painting was when I went to the Boston Museum.
Mhm.
And I don't remember the name of the painting. I should remember. My memory is awful. But it was a painting that Sargent had done of, I think it was a family of girls, and there were
Mhm.
two big urns in the
Yes,
painting.
yes, yeah.
And the urns that were in the painting were right next to the painting.
Right, right, exactly.
And just seeing those actual urns there, I don't know, that somehow feeling connected with Sargent, like imagining myself in the room watching his mastery, so sort of moving.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why, but it was.
No, it,
I,
it it
I
really is,
was,
and the scale of it too, right? I mean, I know there were
oh
young
man.
girls, but those vases were huge.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Yeah.
So, well, man, again, I'm really excited to have you. And I don't know a lot about you. I mean, I know that you were born in Korea. That's about the extent of it in 1971. But why don't you tell me a little bit about your history? How did you end up becoming a painter?
My parents both studied art. They met in college. My dad majored in sculpture, and my mom more fine art, illustration, kind of anything 2D. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they both had careers in art in back in Korea. And then when we decided to move here in '82, um, they they were hoping to pursue that, continue that art path, but it didn't work out, and they did a bunch of other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been surrounded by art all my life. I've been doing it ever since I could hold a crayon. Yeah.
Man, so you've got it on both sides genetically.
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Yeah. Wow. So your parents must have been pretty supportive then, if they both were in art before
They
they came here.
they were, I think it's kind of interesting. Like I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I love it when they say like, it started when I was really young, and then my parents were like super supportive, and they would get
Yeah,
me
that's pretty
art
rare though.
supplies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite like that. I had access to things, and of course, just because they were artists and all their friends were artists, we spent a lot of time in museums and galleries and other artists' homes. But when I declared my major, they were hoping I would go for graphic design, just so I
Mm.
can get a job, which is completely understandable, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to do something more independent, on my own, and do painting. Well, initially, I wanted to do sculpture, but I figured out I had a little more knack for the 2D than 3D. And Indiana University happened to have a really great painting program. So it seemed like the right place to study the right thing, which was painting.
Yeah. And what university was this?
Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana.
Okay. And was it a good department?
Yeah, it's really known for, or what used to be, it's known for primarily representational painting, a lot of great figure painters. So one great
Wow.
thing about that program was that as an undergrad, once you have to apply to get into the BFA program after your sophomore year, and then starting with your junior year, you get your own studio, which is amazing for an
That
undergrad.
is amazing.
Yeah, and you get to, it was your own room. You get to lock it.
What?
No one can come in. Yeah. And it was a building. It was an old dorm that was turned into painting studio. I have no idea what it's like right now, because we're talking about early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So undergrads, all the BFA painters would be on one floor, and on the other floors were the MFA painters. And I would say 90% of them were figure painters. So, just by being around them and being able to go to their critiques was really, really beneficial. I
Wow,
learned.
that's gold.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can't believe that. And the teachers were really talented realists.
Couple of them were. I mean, there was a mix. There were five. The real realists, who taught anatomy and things like that, was Bonnie Skolarski, and she was very, very helpful. I think I had my very first oil painting class, like sophomore year. That's probably actually my only oil painting class, like oil painting 101. And then if you have enough work and decent work, then you apply for the BFA program.
Wait a minute. In your undergrad, you took one oil painting class.
Yeah.
So 16 weeks. That's it.
Pretty much. You don't have to go that way. And you have to take a lot of drawing too prior to that. There at that time, when you get into the BFA, if you get accepted to the BFA program, not everybody did. They only accepted 5 per semester. So there were always 20 of us as an undergrad, as a group.
Wait, 20 as undergrad or 20 as MFA student?
20 undergrad painting majors. Yeah, BFA.
That's it? That's a tiny department.
But there were dozens and dozens of BA painters, who did not make the cut.
Okay.
They had this little tiered system, which wasn't always fair, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the good thing is that you get your studio and you get to work on your own stuff. Bad thing is that you don't necessarily have to take any of the actual painting classes, like the number.
This is so weird.
Yeah. So you were kind of like left on your own to come up with your own body of work that was totally independent and coherent. And it worked out for some of us, and it sometimes was problematic because you don't get a lot of sort of, the really important introductory information. You kind of piecemealed it from the faculty and also all the MFA painters. Yeah.
That's the strangest thing I've ever heard. In all my podcasts, I've never heard a department that functions like that.
It was like that. Yeah.
Wow. But are you grateful for it, or do you wish you had something else? Or sort of in the middle?
A little bit of both, in that I had a great foundation class. And I'm sure I could have chosen to take other electives too, while I'm in the BFA program, but you had your majority of your credit hours dedicated to working in your studio. And then it was kind of run like a grad program, like the faculty would just come by and have crits with you, individual crits. So
But they
you,
wouldn't have a curriculum like basic drawing and painting curriculum. It was
it
just
was,
come in and critique.
it was 1 year we had a guest faculty who ran the BFA program. So my junior year was, his name was Tom Berenger. I can't quite remember his name, but he now teaches in Michigan somewhere. So he was a guest visiting artist, and he, he would talk to you about stuff, and he would make us draw, but it wasn't as structured as, traditional drawing or painting class. But,
Jeez.
so I had to do a lot of catch up, like later on, like in grad school.
Yeah, but what did you learn in grad school? Because isn't grad school just the same as undergrad in your case?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. Then you kind of have to figure out like what do I need to really refine, within my needs, to make your work better. Yeah. So
I'm so confused. So basically, you're paying for an expensive studio with occasional critiques.
Yes.
With your tuition.
Yes. It was structured in a way that, like, it's not like you're by yourself all the time. You're constantly having faculty come through.
Okay.
So imagine it's a lot like a MFA program, little more hands-on. And we all meet, we met several times a week for hours, and we would have discussions, and we would have group critiques, and we would have outings, and it was kind of flexible depending on who was running the program at the time.
Sounds like a youth camp or something.
Maybe.
That's so interesting. Well, you know what? There's part of that sounds actually kind of appealing to me, because I had a very small dose of that when I was in college. It was my senior year, and I went to walk. It was the first day of school, and I went to walk into my figure painting class.
Yeah.
And my teacher, he was meeting all the students at the door, all the new students. And he sees me and he goes, "Jeff, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Register for your class." And he goes, "No, just go home." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Just go home and paint. I'll give you an A. Just show me your work at the end of the year and I'll give you an A."
Right.
And I was like completely taken back. But man, it was the best thing he could have done for me. I got more done that year than any other year in college, just because he let me run free and kind of figure things out on my own. And so I guess I could see the benefit of that.
If, it depends on the individual, right? Like,
right.
We're ready for it. And I think that was their logic at the time. Like I said, I don't know how they run it now, but you had to present a portfolio to get into this program. And if you weren't ready, if they felt like you couldn't work independently, then you remain in the regular BA.
Oh, that makes more sense. Okay. So then the regular BA program is where it was probably more traditional.
Absolutely.
Well, traditional as far as colleges are concerned.
Exactly. You would move your way up, painting 200, painting 300.
Okay. Now that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. That makes total sense.
So that's the tier system. It wasn't, because you're friends with, you're running into each other in the university. So it's kind of a strange dynamic.
Yeah. They're like you little minions in the BA program. Of course, you would never act like that, but
I remember our graduating year, the BFA students, there were 5 of us graduating that one spring. And we had our BFA painting show, in the university gallery. And then the BA students who didn't make it, into the BFA program, had something called like Above and Beyond BFA. That was the name of their show.
Oh, they're trying to one up you guys.
Yeah. It's and the only difference was really, you get a studio or you don't get a studio, and you get a lot of freedom, or you have to kind of follow.
Yeah, that's no small difference though. That's a pretty huge difference. Yeah. So I'm kind of curious, did you kind of follow any of your peers, any in the BA or BFA program? Because I wonder if any of the BA students went on to be great painters.
I can think of one. Yeah, she teaches at I think she majored in, she does both, like she does sculpture and also painting, but
Okay.
she ended up, I know she was a painter and she had shows in the painting exhibit, but now she teaches at Art Institute Chicago, teaching
Oh,
anatomy and
good
stuff
for
like
her.
that. Exactly.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Stick it to the man.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's great. So, all right. So then what did you do after you left school?
So I went directly to graduate school at Yale in New Haven. So I moved to
Wow.
Connecticut, and it was one of those things. Like I was always poor. It's just always had no luck with
Well, yeah,
money.
you're paying Yale tuition, or were you on scholarship or something?
Yale is very, very affordable, and they have a lot of scholarships. So
Oh, it is. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
it's
I assumed
it's
it would be a fortune.
yeah, it is really expensive if you're going there for undergrad, or if you're going to one of the grad schools for like law school, or school of
All right.
medicine or something like that. But for MFA, it's very, very affordable, and I had a
Hmm.
huge scholarship, so I just had to really come up with a little bit of loan to pay for apartment, and food. It
Wow.
was pretty much free. Yeah,
And what was that department like?
that was it was really intense. There's 20 of us, 25 of us, usually around 20 to 25 per class. So you're in that class, and it's a 2-year program. So there's usually around 45, to maybe 50 at the most, MFA painters in one building. Building has now moved, so it's a little different. So I'm not sure how it works there, but it was very intense in that everybody was there was really, really serious. They were just really talented, and there were very few of us who came directly out of undergrad. So I was one of the younger students, and I felt very young and
Hmm.
stupid all the time.
Oh, and I bet you looked young because you look like you're like 35 now. So you probably look like a little tiny baby.
Yeah, probably back, especially back then. So
Yeah.
you're just, but again, I think it can work depending on the individual, right? Like you can either sink or swim, and
Yeah.
you just try to swim as fast as you can so you don't drown. So you paint a lot, and you pay attention, and you give it your best. But it was very intense. The faculty was very intense, and at the time they were
How
all,
were they intense? Were they academically intense, or was it more like express yourself
they
and
were
be
very
an artist?
intimidating.
Oh,
For instance, you would have maybe, I think, 6 or 7 core faculty, and then you would have another half dozen guest critics who would come in, every few weeks.
were
Um,
these great painters, great artists, or just
yes, I mean,
professional critics of
no, no,
sorts?
they're called critics. That was a position, but they were all painters, mostly painters.
Okay.
I think occasionally they might have a critic come in as a critic, but most of them are painters. But it ranged quite a bit from like William Bailey, who was a very representational realist painter, to Mel Bachner, who is a conceptual, I mean, he paints, but he's a conceptual artist. So you weren't always talking about like how to paint that elbow right or get that shirt, something like that. It's,
Right, right.
the conversation varied. It was like, why are you painting at all? Like, what's this stuff? And to
Hmm.
much more specific, like you can't use that brush. Like you got to buy a sable brush. It was really wide range.
Hmm.
But they were intimidating in that you know, William Bailey was an extraordinary painter, and I knew a lot about him. And he would come in, and he was very, very generous, and wonderful teacher. But like he would come in like a pressed Oxford shirt, and khakis and loafers, and it was like you didn't want to get close because you were afraid you're gonna like rub off paint on him,
Hmm.
in trouble. So it was intimidating in that way, and knowing like what museums held their work, and what they do outside of the classroom, more intimidating it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Did you learn a lot from them?
I think for some, I think if you're a good student, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we all sat around, complained a lot of self-pity and whatnot, but I think you try to like learn from everybody, like even if they didn't like your work and they're not painters and they didn't really want to address your painting specifically, then you try to learn about like what it's like to be an artist, just professional things, right? Outside of the actual work. So it really depends. I think anywhere, if there are people and you're trying to be resourceful, you can try to, make your time as worthwhile as possible, whoever you're
Mm-hmm.
meeting with. Certainly the painters who actually painted with brushes were a little bit easier to talk to, because then you're talking about,
Wait, what do you mean with brushes? What were the rest of them doing? Just rolling around in paint?
uh, no, there are some, like I said, there are some more bent towards conceptual art.
Right.
So, but you can still learn, I think you just have to be, you have to be a good student,
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so what happened after you finished up there? What was your next step?
I just started teaching college right away. I started teaching part-time at University of New Haven.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I was 24
Wow,
or
that's
about
crazy.
to turn, because I was 22 when I graduated, I think I was
Yeah.
25 maybe, or I just turned 25. So I was very young. I have no idea. And boy,
How intimidating was that?
that was scary. That was kind of scary. I remember teaching a class. It was like an elective class, kind of an art appreciation. There was a weird part drawing, part 2D, part 3D, and a little bit of art history thrown in for non-art majors.
Yeah.
And there was a table of men who were like middle-aged, and they were all cops because that university has a big criminal justice program. So they were taking.
So these were just electives for them.
Exactly. And they needed, I don't know why, they were in there, and I found them very intimidating, because I'm thinking like, they were looking at me like, who are you, kid? Like, what are you talking about? And
Do you think that was real, or do you think that was imagined?
I no, it was not. I got some attitude,
Yeah. It's funny. When I started private teaching, this is the reason I asked this.
Mm.
The middle-aged man was the most challenging one for me. Not always, but I started teaching privately. I got out of school about 28. That's when I finished school.
Okay.
And I immediately started teaching privately. And I'd get, middle-aged women all the way down to like early 20s, and just the whole range, even older people, older as in like 60, 70.
Sure.
The whole range. But every now and then I'd get like, I don't know, a 50, 60-year-old man. And those are the ones that, even though I knew what I was talking about, or they wouldn't be there, this was the weird dichotomy in the whole thing. It's like, you're paying me.
Mm-hmm.
You must believe that I know something. But yeah, because it's different. It's almost, in a way, when it's private, it's almost different than a school. Because when they register for your class, they have limited options. So they show up to your class, right? And they get what they get to some degree in a public school or in a traditional university.
Right.
But with me, they literally sought me out, paid me tuition, and then they'd still argue with me. Like, what are you? I mean, it just was a very strange thing. But it's funny because now that I'm 50 years old, it doesn't happen anymore. But I don't think I know that much more. It's just this weird sort of respect that you can't, it's difficult to demand when you're in your 20s. Even if you know what you know, even if you know more than them, it's funny. It was frustrating. I remember being frustrated often with that.
Yeah. Now I don't have any problems. I have older students frequently. I guess because you're older.
Yeah, you're
Gray
older
hair.
now. Yeah. Well, I had a friend, his name was Bill Whitaker, and he said that you never get respected until you start getting gray in your beard.
Is that right?
That's what he said. Yeah. And I always thought it was funny because he'd say it all the time. He's passed now, but he'd say it all the time. And I thought, no way, everyone always respected you. And But it's true. It's once it feels like even if you're some sort of prodigy as a kid, I think there's something to that. I'm not suggesting I was, but there's something to that. This psychological element of having a teacher who's older than you rather than younger than you. You know,
Maybe
but
so. Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. I can imagine that would have been intimidating.
And that, that lasted a while, probably until my 30s or mid 30s, where you're constantly getting mistaken as a student on
Oh
campus.
yeah, I'm sure.
Um, Not anymore. So I can't complain about that.
It's
One good thing
bittersweet,
about
right?
getting older.
Yeah. Yeah, you get the respect, but not the compliments, right? Yeah, that's funny. All right, so what are you doing now? What happened there? Are you still teaching at this same university, or have you moved around, or what?
No, I moved around a bit. I was there for a few years, and then I taught full time for 6 or 7 years at Kansas City Art Institute in Kansas City,
Mm-hmm.
Missouri, which was a great place. And so we moved out there. And then in 2004, we moved back to Connecticut because my husband,
Okay, who's we?
oh,
Okay,
my
so you have
husband, yeah,
family.
we got married.
Okay.
Yeah, we got married just before we went out to Kansas City. And then once we decided to have a family, I really needed, I couldn't imagine doing it without some family support, um, raising kids, uh, and trying to paint and teach. So I quit my job. I quit teaching for a little while, and we decided to move back to Connecticut, where my husband's family's from. So so we landed here, and so I was, I knew Connecticut. I like Connecticut, from having gone to grad school here. So we we raised a family, and once the kids got a little bit, they were like toddler age. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
antsy to go back to teaching. It's something that I've always done. So and it's always been a balance for me to paint, but also have some time away from the studio, talking about painting, to students.
Right.
And that was really embedded into my routine. So then I've been teaching. I've taught at several places. I've commuted a lot. Connecticut's weird in that it's a very small state. So if you want to teach anywhere, you kind of have to drive a little bit far to get to any of the cities, the bigger cities. And we live in
Right.
middle of the state and not quite near anything. Um,
Hmm.
so currently I'm
How far are
teaching.
you from New York City?
I am about an hour and a half away.
Oh, that's great. Do you go
Yeah,
down there much?
maybe 2 hours. Yeah. I used to a lot. I'm getting a little bit. I think as I get older, I don't know, everything becomes a little bit of a chore.
Yeah, I know
You
what you
get the
mean.
train in, and it's like, oh, I have to like drive to the train station. I know, like I shouldn't complain about being able to go to the Met, within 2 hours, but unless it's a really good show, like I might skip it.
Yeah, I don't know what happens to us. I still live downtown Salt Lake City, and every now and then I'll be driving home from work. My studio is just a mile from my house, and it'll be like a Friday night. I always get home around 8 p.m. So if it's a Friday night, people are already at the bars. All these young people are hanging out on the streets, and I'm always like, God, I wish I still had the energy for that kind of stuff. I'm just gonna go home and go to bed.
Yeah, no, yeah, something happens. Late
Yeah,
40s
I know.
is just, yeah, yeah. I
You just lose interest in a way, but there's like a little part of me that's like, oh, it looks like it's really fun, but no, it's not.
No, sleep is way more important now.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about your kids. How old are your kids now?
I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old about to turn 18 soon.
Oh,
One,
we've got the exact same age kids.
really? Really?
Well, I've got two 20-year-olds,
Okay.
obviously twins, and then I've got a 17-year-old. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
How about that?
So you know
Yeah.
what? So you
Sorry, no,
you've gone through the
yeah, we're
same
living
thing.
a similar life.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what about them? Did they ever get interested in art?
No. It's kind of interesting. I think I heard you talk about your daughter taking
Yeah,
classes.
my daughter studies with me. She
Right,
wants to be a
right, right.
painter. And then my son is going to be studying with me. He's in Romania right now, but when he gets home, he's going to be studying with me as well.
See, I
But
think
my 17-year-old, no interest at
that,
all. Nothing. Zilch.
I I know they both have some gifts. Like, it's you can tell when they're little.
Yeah.
And my daughter is still interested, but she's more interested in ceramics and
Oh, cool.
collage and yeah, a little more hands-on. My son is not, and but my daughter's interest is really limited. I mean, I think partly that she probably, grew up looking at seeing me and what how I portray the life of an artist, and she's like, heck no, like I don't want that.
Really, you think? Has it been that bad?
But I'm probably just a complainer. It's like I'm never
Yeah.
satisfied, and it's like nothing's good enough, and probably that.
Oh, yeah. This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary Brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting.
But
Yeah, that part of being an artist is rough. I'm surprised my kids haven't. Well, they have seen it, but I think they've, or at least Addie. It's too early to know with my son Chase because he hasn't started yet. But I think she associates all of my crazy with genetics, not my career. So she's like, hey, I'm screwed anyway, so I might as well be painting because I've probably got my dad's genetics anyway. So I'm probably going to be just as crazy.
I mean, I think that's wonderful. I mean, that's so wonderful that they have interest and they want to follow in your footsteps. I think that to me says you exuded some kind of wonderful life of being an artist, and they're like, yeah, I want that. Like I want something like that.
Maybe. I don't
Like
know.
when you think of famous actors and their kids go into acting, you kind of go like,
Right.
they probably thought like, mom has a really good life, doing this. I want a piece of that. Like I want to get into it. So
Yeah.
I imagine that if they're like struggling or if they're unhappy with their career, not that I'm unhappy, but I guess being a Scorpio, I'm just brooding all the time.
Are you a Scorpio too? Our kids are the same age. I'm also a Scorpio. How about
Are
that?
you?
Yeah.
When's your birthday?
November 13th.
Mine's
So I'm turning 50 in a couple weeks. Yeah.
Oh wow, mine's the 10th. So yeah.
No way. That's funny. Yeah. Scorpios. Another reason we're crazy.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what is it? I'm curious. What is it about painting that warrants complaining? I mean, I complain too, and there's a lot to complain about, but I'm curious what your perspective is. What is it about the life of an artist that's so challenging for you?
You know, painting is fantastic. When I'm in my studio and I'm painting, like it's the best thing. I don't want
Yeah.
to be anywhere else. I could be scraping up paint from my palette. I'm super happy. I'm whistling. That's
Really? That's great.
yeah. But it's all the other stuff. It's the business end of it.
Oh, tell me about it.
And it's also trying to make a living. And for me, it's always been like if I was teaching a lot more, I would paint less, obviously, but you have to worry less about selling as much because you had that teaching salary. Now that I've been teaching less and I've been trying to produce more and sell more, so there's that part. And some shows do really well and some shows don't do so well, and I'm not so smart to always make the most marketable decisions. Like you kind of want to like do your own thing and
Yeah, but don't you? Well, you wouldn't be happy if you weren't, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like how to sustain it, as a career, that part. That's the I think those are the areas I can complain about. I can complain about like shippers, galleries.
You
all
could just
day
list a
long.
whole, but just send me a list. We'll put it in the show notes of all the things you complain about.
Exactly. It will be lengthy, very lengthy.
Yeah, a whole list so everyone
Yeah.
can know how terrible it is. No, it's interesting what you were saying about this idea of teaching gives you some sense of security, but then you don't get to paint as much. But when you're painting, you're super happy, but then you have to stress about sales. That's the catch-22.
Yeah.
It's like the stress of being an artist often overshadows the joy of making art, right? So you have to decide, do I want to do the side hustle of teaching in order to get rid of that dark, overshadowing stress? But then if I do that, then I don't get to paint anyway as much. So is it worth it? It's always that balance, right? Trying to figure out where you're going to maximize your joy.
Absolutely.
But you're not, it's like you'll never get it all.
No. Yeah. So I'll just keep complaining and.
Yeah, just keep complaining. It's all good. But even if you're selling everything you paint, I don't know about you. I don't know how many good years you've had and how many bad years you've had. But I found personally that even if things are going really well, that feeling like it could all end tomorrow never goes away.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like you have to be a starving artist to feel the stress of being an artist. I mean, you could be making a good living and still be like, what if they don't sell this time?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just have a pity party for we got another hour and a half.
I'm sorry.
No, this is great. Yeah. No, it's great though. Yeah. Obviously you enjoy it or you wouldn't still be doing it.
And it's, if you really, I feel like if you have some talent, I'm sure you meet people like this. And I mean, you had so many very successful, or they seem very successful, commercially successful artists on your podcast. So, and I'm learning a little bit, but I never quite clicked. Like you want to make a living, but like, I'm only willing to do so many things,
Yeah.
in your studio. I'm sure you're the same way.
Yeah.
Like we could paint, we could paint beautiful flowers or landscapes. Like sometimes I look at those Southwestern landscape artists and go like, I should just move to the Southwest, like go paint mountains,
Yeah, they're selling like crazy.
Exactly. And people love it and they're beautiful. I mean, if you can do it well. But then at the end of the day, like you want to paint what you want to paint. And and a lot of times it's not something, it might be good, because of whatever my idea or my technique or whatever, but it might not be the thing that somebody wants to hang on the wall, or pay for it and hang on the wall.
Yeah, sometimes I talk to people that don't understand that. And one analogy that comes to mind is it would be like being a chef that was forced to make food that you didn't like to eat, that didn't even taste good.
Yeah.
Not to you personally. Other people might love the taste. That's not the point. But if you're cooking all day long every day and you don't even like to taste your own food, what's the point of being a cook?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100%.
I briefly showed with Arcadia Contemporary New York City. Many of your artists, I've seen their work through there. I got introduced to their work from that gallery because their roster has a lot of wonderful realist painters. And the gallery director, Steve, who was really great. Like he wanted to, he's like, yeah, let's see it and let's try it. And he gave me a show and stuff and it worked out for a little while. But I remember like for our first meeting, he's like, just bring it down and let me see it in person. So I brought him down and he's like, okay, I mean, obviously they're really good, but like, what do I call it? Like, cause it's just hanging drapes, right? And it's not even
right.
like a shirt hanging or it's just, he's like, how do I describe this? Like, how do I sell this? I don't know if I can sell
and I'm just going to point out that I just opened a slideshow. So for people who are listening, they can see samples of your work while you're telling this story.
Yeah. So, he's like, I like, like, we can try it, but I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. If somebody asks, like, what's it, what is this thing? What's behind it? Like, why isn't there something behind it? Or why isn't somebody wearing it instead of just being,
Really? I wouldn't have a hard time with it. You're a painter of tapestries. You're a painter of textiles.
yeah,
Period.
yeah. Well, I think he's pretty good at his job. So he has
Huh.
a point, and I kind of was thinking like, this is going to be a short-term visit with this gallery because it
So
doesn't.
you're not with them anymore?
No, no, no. Yeah.
They weren't able to consistently move the work?
Yeah, I think we sold like I say we sold 4 out of 12 pieces he had, and
Okay.
my prices are pretty low compared to some of their, big hitters.
Yeah.
So, but it was it was wonderful kind of meeting the roster of the artists there, or getting introduced to new artists, and how that kind of gallery runs its business, which was a lot different than some of the other galleries I've worked with.
Yeah. But yeah, and he does know what he's doing, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know him. Well, I've met him, but I don't know him well. But it doesn't mean that he has the right clientele for you, though.
Exactly. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what it is. He's like, I don't know if I can sell, sell these to.
Yeah, because his clientele's looking for a certain thing. They know what to. Arcadia has a certain taste, and his clientele kind of goes for that taste.
Yeah.
So, and yours would stand out big time.
Exactly.
There.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It did.
Big time. So, yeah, there's nothing like yours. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, which I think is a great thing.
Thank you. That's really important for me. The sacrifice of, sometimes maybe not tapping into a certain market. I do okay. I mean, not enough to quit teaching, but I do okay. But I like to think that, especially with this body of work, all these draperies and sort of the shadow box that you're looking at, I like to think I'm building my own following. I'm building my own market, because there's really nothing quite exactly like that. But you'll be surprised. A lot of galleries have turned me down, basically saying like, it doesn't fit, and I don't know where I fit. And I mean,
really,
now I do have galleries, and it's really because of Instagram.
So, okay, I want to hear about that, because this comes up all the time. Instagram. I just interviewed Jeff Larson, and it came up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sell anything off Instagram, but I don't try. I never even say anything's for sale. It never is, frankly. But it's not like I'm getting messages left and right say, "Oh, can I buy one of your paintings?"
Right.
I mean, the only time I get that is when I think they're scam messages.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
So do you actually sell directly off of Instagram, or are you just getting introduced to different galleries? Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
I get a lot of gallery inquiries, saying, are they available? Do you have them bigger?
Well, that's great.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. But it's, that really, I don't, galleries can be fickle. I work with all different types, and I'm very cautious,
I've been burned so bad.
Yeah, it's just, it can be really hard. There are a lot of overseas galleries that want to work with you, and I'm thinking like,
oh, that's scary.
No, yeah, and you meet with, or you have a Zoom talk, and you talk about the details, and you're like, no, that's not gonna.
You know what though? It is scary, but the reason I'd be scared is because once you ship it overseas, you may never see it again.
Exactly. Like, what's the guarantee? I have to go track them down,
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's no different in the States. I had a gallery in Laguna Beach that ran off with $85,000 worth of paintings.
Wow.
Yeah.
He just
never paid me.
Like
Gone. They're gone. I can't contact the person. He disappeared. I think he moved to Mexico or something.
Wow. Yeah.
But and he stole like 145 from another artist, and some from another artist. And the one artist he stole 145,000 worth of, he took him to court and won. The artist won, but the courts in California don't enforce it. So he still didn't get his money, but he also lost another 25,000 in court fees.
Oh my gosh.
So now the guy's out like over $180,000 or something, $170,000. And the guy just said, no, I'm still not paying you. Which is crazy because if you steal a car, well, in California, you can steal anything now. You don't get in trouble. But in general, if you steal a car, that's grand theft auto and that's prison time. But if you steal from an artist, 170,000 worth of paintings,
Right.
no big deal. Take it up in civil court and don't pay. Yeah. So I'm lucky it was only 85,000. Only.
Awful. That's
only 85,000.
horrible.
Yeah. And the way I found out about it was he kept on blowing me off saying, yeah, I got someone interested. I got someone interested. And then I started finding out about other people being burned. And I started getting, the first time I realized he had stolen it was when I got a not a message. It was a Facebook post I saw that said, I just love my Jeff HEIN painting. And it was a picture of it. And it was one that he had claimed that he had still. So I reached out to that person and I said, how long have you had that painting for? And they said 4 years. I was like, are you freaking kidding me?
Wow.
We were just talking about this painting. He said he had an interested buyer. He can't send it. Because at this point, I'm like, are you ever going to send me my work back? He's like, oh, I got interested people. Da, da, da. And he had sold them a long time ago. So all these paintings have long since been sold.
Yeah.
And so it's not that he stole the paintings. He stole the money that he made from the paintings. But of course, you know, I'm not going to take those paintings back from those people. I wouldn't do that. But so
Right.
they got, yeah, it's crazy, right? So that's in California. So
That's terrible. That's one of the worst things I've ever heard.
I could tell you stories. Oh man. But yeah, but the point is if a good opportunity shows up in Europe, honestly, you're not in any less, there's no less risk than the United States. They can rob you here too.
It's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's all that stuff that makes me want to complain and lose sleep.
Put it on the list.
That's
Another
on
thing to
my
complain
list,
about.
my long list.
Another thing to complain about.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. All right. On a positive note. We're talking about getting ripped off by galleries. Oh my gosh. So tell me a little bit about your process, because that's one of the things that in fact, let's pull up your work actually here. What's the best way to look at your work? Is it your website or your Instagram?
Instagram has more like studio shots, so you can sort of see the wall set.
Okay. That would be great.
Yeah.
I think that's more interesting.
Yeah.
Is for this podcast. Okay. So here's the thing that blows my mind with you. And I do it myself too, but I know how bad it hurts my head. But every time I work on a pattern, even remotely like this, and I've never done anything this difficult, I find that I get lost. I look at the still life and then I come back to the painting and I have no idea where I am.
Yeah.
And it could take you 10 minutes just to figure out which flower or leaf you're working on again.
Yeah.
And you're doing it all freehand. It doesn't look like you're transferring anything or gridding or projecting or.
No,
you got some chops.
I enjoy that part the most.
Really?
I know. It's like, it's weird. I really like the struggle. I mean, but it's not a huge, I guess sometimes it's a struggle, like when it doesn't work out. I mean, there were some patterns that are harder than others. That one was fairly easy. You know, it's almost like I'm really trying to memorize the repetition, you know, like finding the loop in that pattern.
Right.
And
so you're not copying verbatim. You're just figuring out what the pattern is and repeating it.
It's pretty close.
Yeah, it looks pretty close. That's the thing.
Pretty close. I mean, you know, there might be a half an inch here. I might let it slide if I'm like really far along, but it's pretty close. I keep it. That's part of my joy is like challenging myself to go, okay, let's get it right. You know, I'm not half.
So a lot of people would say, well, it's fabric and no one's going to know any difference. What do you say to that?
I paint, you know, it's for me. Like, I know what I did. You know what I mean? Like,
but what is it about it? First of all, I'm with you 100%. I am like a stickler about accuracy. I don't care if it's a portrait. I don't care if it's blades of grass.
Right.
But my reasoning is I never want to lose my drawing skills.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not drawing every day, and if I'm allowing if I'm relaxing my skills, then they're going to atrophy.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your reasoning for it? Is it that you actually enjoy the struggle, or is it partly what I am after, that you don't want your mental muscles to atrophy?
That's a really interesting reflection, because I've never thought about it. I've never thought about losing it, but I think that's
well, you're never gonna, because you're
real. Yeah, I should fear that too. Now I got one.
No, you shouldn't, because you're doing it. You're drawing every day.
Yeah, I really enjoy that part. I have never, of course, when I'm teaching, I'm like, draw it all out, like plan it all out and draw it, just so that you don't go into it sort of blindly into painting and not know, especially with younger students. But I think I'm just impatient. I just want to get to it. And I don't need it, like I get asked all the time, like, why don't you just project it? And I'm like, well, that would take time too. Then what are you going to do? Like do a pencil thing and then paint on top of it? But I can do it like in once, you know what I mean? Like I can just start with the paint. And I think with anything else, even with figures or landscape, whatever I'm working on, even when I was younger, I was kind of impatient and sort of rushing that. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I also know I have a pretty good eye, for accuracy. So it saves me time. I just get
you have the luxury of it saving you time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, if they didn't have that eye for accuracy, it wouldn't save them time. They'd be tripping over their own feet the entire process.
Exactly. But,
yeah.
I mean, same for any, I imagine like any photorealists or like hyperrealists, there's a lot of that time where they have to project it or grid it out. And there's all that kind of prep work before you even touch paint. Right. And I just want to get to the paint part, to play around with the paint. So I always almost start with kind of a colored background or a background fabric that's sort of worked out as like loosely with the values, and then just going with the paint. And of course, it's not a one-shot deal where I'm just putting one color and, like drawing with brown or something or yellow. But that's the part that figuring it out and kind of like getting it right. And, working my way like 2-3 inches over this way, and then finding the right flower to meet up in that area is just so great. Like, very happy.
Are you OCD at all? A little bit?
I am not. I am so not. It's just maybe I've become that way with this body of work. I mean, my work wasn't always it wasn't that tight, forever. But
yeah. Well, just because you find that it's like, for lack of a better example at this point, it's like you're kind of like a pimple popper. It's like you're just finding joy in that little thing. Like, oh, I just need to get that, and it's not rational necessarily.
Yeah.
My wife's one of those people. But one person, one might say it's sort of irrational, where it's like, what's joyful about getting a leaf in exactly the right spot?
Yeah.
But I'm with you 100%. I share that level of crazy a little bit.
I think so. I mean, and it's not for everyone. So this is a tough thing. Like I often get asked to do a workshop so that people can make this kind of painting, right? Like a busy.
Oh, good luck.
And then I'm thinking, well, I can't, I share my process all the time on Instagram and
yeah.
You can see like there's no prep work. There's nothing I can do in like a 3-day, 4-day workshop. And it would be kind of, unproductive to say, hey, just kind of wing it, right? Like by sight. And I can't.
Especially in a workshop, because 14 out of 15 members of any workshop don't really draw well.
Exactly.
But they come to paint and you're like, Like I can't teach you to paint. You can't draw yet,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this would drive everyone up a wall in a workshop.
So I have I wish I can explain to these places like, no, it's kind of hard to transfer that information, because it's not really the right way to do it either. Like I don't teach it that way. Like, if I'm teaching painting 101 and we got a drapery, like I don't have them do it this way. I have them draw it
Yeah.
out, take their time or project it or transfer it, any method to beat that system, right?
Yeah.
To gain that speed. I, I
Yeah.
I'm all for that, and I always tell students to do that. But this is what I like. I don't like to paint with my laptop open or or any kind of electronics nearby. It's just me and the thing and my
You
eyes.
don't like listen to podcasts like The Undraped Artist or anything like that?
Exactly. I do.
Oh, okay, good.
I always have
Good.
the radio on or a story or podcast. Yeah, I definitely have something in the background. But yeah, I just, I kind of like it immediate. I'm just there and I have my setup and I'm sitting really close. And I think partly it's because my eyesight has changed a lot as I'm getting older, and I can't see things that well far away. And then if I wear glasses to see it far away, then I can't.
Then you can't see the stuff up close.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I have. I recently got. What do they call them? They're like trifocals.
Oh
They're,
yeah.
What are they called? There's a word for them.
Yeah. And multifocal.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
but
I
it's
know
like
what
it's
you mean.
clear. It's clear.
Everything, right?
Yeah. Anyway, and all the old people that I go to church with are making fun of me. They're like, "We have bifocals," and you're like, "Shut up." I actually don't like them though. It kind of is weird, disconcerting. I can never find the right spot to look through.
It gave me. I tried a pair. I couldn't really.
Progressives.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what they're called, progressives.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I don't think I can paint with them.
No, it's hard because you're like looking through the bottom at your painting and then looking through the top at the still life, and then it's like, oh, it's terrible.
And I think that's one of the reasons why my work's gotten a bit smaller and tighter. I'm just sitting really close, so I can see everything.
Yeah.
Without having to squint or having to move a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had to just paint, just still not wear glasses. I can't stand it. So I still don't wear them. And then like every hour or so, I'll put on glasses just to see if I've completely messed up the painting.
You paint large. I mean, you paint huge.
I paint huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the individual components are as finished as yours often. So it's like a lot of little paintings,
Yeah.
So I still need to see well.
Right.
But yeah, that's part of getting old.
Exactly.
It's brutal. So do you use incandescent light exclusively? Because that's what looks like's going on here. Or not incandescent, artificial light exclusively?
Yes.
You do. Okay. Yeah. And why do you prefer that?
This body of work, I guess forever. I really like this sort of dramatic lighting, of
hard edge.
Yeah. I've always been drawn to that. And even when I was young, like in undergrad, I wanted to draw like Caravaggio, like all my paintings were like dark and light and jagged, and I love that drama. And I think even now it is like that. Like I always light my still life in that way. So there's a lot of value shifts. So there's a lot of contrast, and it gives me more to work with. Like the brocades, you can see the three-dimensional texture pop out more, with that controlled lighting. And it's also the consistency of light too, right? Like I have all my windows, closed and blinded off so that there's no natural light coming in. So it's
especially in New England, because it's not consistent at all.
No. And it changes so much. So I just need it exactly the same no matter what time I go into my studio,
Yeah, I interviewed Carlo Russo, and he works from natural light, but he lives in Philadelphia, I think. And he's like, yeah, you just sort of have to deal with it. One day it's cloudy, next day it's sunny, another day it's like clouds and then sun and then clouds and then sun. And he's, I mean, it sounds awful. It sounds really, really challenging. In Utah, we're kind of lucky because in the summer months, it's sunny all the time. So
I bet, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So my skylight in the studio is just bathed with light all summer. But in the winter, it's cloudy all summer. So my studio is kind of dark and dreary. Or sorry, in the winter, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
cloudy the entire time. So it's kind of dark and dreary.
Right.
But yeah, that's tricky. So I get that. You know, and I'm thinking about what you said about the workshops that people have been asking you to come and teach. But it seems like there's no trick to what you're doing. It's just good painting. I don't see any, you know, special techniques or special glazing tricks or
No, it's
like,
not.
you're just direct painting.
It's just old-fashioned painting, right?
Yeah.
Trick to
Yeah.
it.
So what's to learn? Just look at it and paint it, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I have nothing. I have not come up with something amazing to share. You know, like my trick. I don't have any. It's good color mixing, good drawing. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, that's
Glazing.
not to say that teaching shouldn't be taught, but my point is that if someone is coming to you specifically to learn how to paint the way you paint,
Yeah.
well, I would say that person, she paints the way we all paint. Like, it's
Yeah.
just the subject matter you're interested in,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't, yeah. So it's kind of a funny thing to need a workshop from the woman herself, right?
Right.
Just grab some drapery and get some painting lessons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, that said, there's nothing easy about what you're doing. It's remarkable. Like, you really got a mastery of color and value.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I just have to take a minute to thank each one of my generous patrons for your part in keeping this podcast going. I could not continue to do it without you, so thank you so much. If you're not a patron yet, but you love the show and you listen regularly, please consider becoming a patron. It's really easy to do, and it doesn't have to break the bank. Just head over to theundrapedartist.com and click on the link Be My Patron on Podbean. And then choose a monthly donation amount that fits your budget. It's that simple.
I think
I'm going to pull up some finished stuff so people can see more clearly what I mean by that. Like, look at this. This is mind-blowing. The amount of detail. And you're sure you don't have OCD?
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't, I feel like I'm really loosey goosey and kind of all over.
Oh, look how three-dimensional it is. Yeah. Okay, so tell me this.
Yeah.
I noticed that there are times where you're going to pull up. Well, let me pull one up where I saw you masking. So I guess you might call it a trick that I wouldn't have thought to do, but maybe you can direct me. There was a point where you pulled off some tape because you were protecting the highlights. Oh, right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're protecting the highlights. So tell me about, when you pull off the tape, you're going to have some hard edges between the tape edge and the next plane where the tape was masking, right?
Yeah.
So then what do? Do you mix a middle value and sort of mush them together? Is that exactly what you do?
Yeah.
Okay. So
And I don't necessarily go all the way to the tape. It's just to kind of guide you.
Just to make sure you have a straight line along that
when
seam.
Because you're painting from life, you're like looking at the fabric, and it's got that sheen. And I purposely buy fabric that has a lot of rich sheen, so I can play off of them.
Yeah.
And if you move your head this way, like 1 inch, that sheen has moved, right? Like.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So at some point, you gotta like designate, like, okay, my shine, channel of shine is gonna go right here, no matter what I do, because I'm constantly moving. So if I don't guide myself or have some barrier, I'm going to be fixing that line that's kind of like moving around all the time. So that took me a little while.
Yeah. When did you discover that?
I guess a few years ago.
Were you just frustrated one day because you're getting these wobbly lines?
Yeah. And, sometimes you just paint, you're just painting and then you don't realize what you're doing. And then you're correcting your painting and then you're like shifting. And I often work with like a simple bridge, instead of a maul stick. Like I have like a little wooden platform that I can rest my hand on.
Okay. Yeah.
And I would use that as a guide sometimes, if it's a straight line. But then when it's curved like that, like in that blue painting, um, and if you buy like a really that thin masking tape, you can sort of curve it, and
Mm-hmm.
create that path. So it can be very useful, for those really shiny ones.
Hmm. With those sort of iridescent fabrics, isn't it just so satisfying when you step back and you're like, whoa, that looks real? Because when you're
Absolutely.
up close to it, it doesn't make a lot of sense, I imagine, sometimes. It's just a lot of chaos.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then you step back and you're just like, whoa, that's satin.
And I think that's why we keep doing it, right? Like
I
that
know. It's
moment.
like magic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Another one that kind of blew my mind, or some that have blown my mind, is when you're doing these lace ones. Holy crud. That is insane. So it's the same deal. Like you're not getting lost. Somehow you're managing all these proportions, which is really impressive. You must have an accurate eye.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess like if you do anything for a long time, I think you get better at it, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I think for me, it's like and that's why I moved away from like figurative work. I started sort of I guess my first professional body of work were more about curtains with people. You can sort of see reflections of people. So
Oh,
they're,
I think I saw one of those online.
yeah,
Yeah, okay. I didn't realize that was earlier work.
yeah, it was maybe 20 years ago,
Okay.
maybe about 25 years ago. I was doing windows. And then I kept changing the different window dressings, to make it interesting, make the painting interesting. And then it just kept taking over. Like I wanted to close the curtain, and I really enjoyed.
That's a great evolution. You're like, I just don't want that person in here anymore. Let's
Yeah,
just do the
yeah.
curtain.
So they got squeezed out. The figures got squeezed out.
So how long have you been exclusively doing this kind of work?
Oh, only 4 years, like around a little bit before COVID, like four.
Oh, really? That's pretty new.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean,
Man, and you're not a thin painter either. You're really building up some paint.
I love thick paint. Yeah.
Wow. I wouldn't have expected that.
I
That
think
is a lot of paint right there.
it really depends. I don't really have like a set style, I don't think. Like some people do, you know what I mean? Like some
Yeah.
artists, like you can imagine the surface, and it's pretty much the same surface no matter what they're painting.
Yeah.
I kind of respond to the fabric. So like this one was really rough, like on the backside. That's the backside of the brocade. And it was like torn up, and it was chunky, and there was this kind of, that kind of robustness to it. So I really wanted to play around with the impasto effect there. But then when I have flatter fabrics that are a little bit less robust in the stitching, then I go flatter, So it really depends.
So what would be, like this? Would this be more flat?
Exactly. Yeah, that's like super
Yeah. Oh,
flat,
yeah. That's much thinner.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a person visit me, just randomly knock on the door yesterday, which happens occasionally. And it was a mom and her two girls. And they wanted to see my studio. And the one girl was 14 years old. She was the most enthusiastic girl I'd ever seen in my life. It was like she had just discovered the North Pole in Santa's workshop or something. She was just skipping around the studio. It was really cute. But
I'm
she
sure.
asked me,
What
she asked me this question. She was looking at this big painting I'm working on, this big biblical scene. And she's like, do you blend a lot? When do you blend? And I'm like, I felt so stupid. I'm like, okay, here's a 14-year-old that is obviously really excited to be here and ask a professional artist what she perceives to be a really relevant and important question, and I don't have an answer for her. I was like, when it's appropriate?
Right? That's a good question.
How do I answer that? Like, I don't know. I make it thin and blend it out when it's the right thing to blend out. Like, I didn't have an answer. I could see a little bit of disappointment. She's like, okay. Yeah, it's funny. All right, let's see. Yeah, here's another one that's kind of great. Oh, that's a whole bunch. Oh man, these satins are something else. Oh, you got a lot of videos. Let's see.
Yeah, there's
I
fit.
got to remember not to click the videos.
Yes,
Okay, here we
right.
go. Yeah, again, my gosh. So you must be painting in layers too in order to manage not letting all these colors bleed into each other.
Yes, I do. I work all over and in many layers. And I use liquid. I don't know what medium you use, but I use
I
liquid.
used to use liquid all the time. It's a good one.
Yeah, it dries fast and it allows me to come back in the next day and it's tacky enough to go over it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've never been kind of like some artists work from like one section and then spreads out. And I
I
think,
don't know how that's possible when you're working from life.
yeah, I think that's the main difference, right? Like, because you have to
Yeah.
see the whole thing and figure it
You have
out.
to see the whole thing. Yeah. I've never understood that working from life. You'd have to, unless it's a perfect situation where nothing ever changes, you are in exactly the same spot. The model's in exactly the same spot, never moves a muscle. I suppose it'd be possible, but it doesn't. I'm with you. I've never understood
Yeah,
it.
I don't, I'm not, I don't get that.
Yeah.
But
But
some
to each
people
their
do.
own.
Some people do. You know, like
Some
I
great painters do it. I don't know
absolutely,
how they do it, but
absolutely. Like they'll do the whole figure, but they'll start with the head and then like just kind of like work their way down. Whereas I was taught to go like head to toe,
yeah, do the whole
the
thing at
whole
once.
thing.
Yeah, that's sort of the Grand Central School way of doing it. They'll get the whole thing laid out exactly accurate and then start rendering from the head, almost like a printer, just
Oh yeah, yeah,
down. Yeah, it obviously everyone knows Grand Central produces good work, but
right.
it's not the way I do it.
Yeah,
It's very different. Yeah, so I relate. I think we probably paint very similar, it's seeming like. Um, God, look at that. That is mind blowing. Colors are beautiful. So
thank you.
that brings up a question. Do you use a pretty broad palette of colors?
I It really depends on the fabric. Again, I know I don't have a set palette, so I try to
Mm.
come up with a palette when I pick a fabric, So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So like on this one, you may pull out cobalt and ultramarine blue or something, and
Exactly,
whereas
exactly.
another one, there's no need for it.
Right. And then I'm thinking like I need, alizarin crimson, but maybe a little bit of cadmium red deep for the reds, and then I pick up my yellows. So depending on the fabric, it really varies. I could have, 25 paints out or four, depending on the
Yeah.
color scheme.
Yeah, I've started doing that. I used to have a pretty fixed palette, and lately I've started doing that too, just pulling out the colors that I need.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice because I was finding that a lot of the palettes or a lot of the paint was just drying on my palette anyway. I wasn't even grabbing it.
Right, right, right.
Do you ever try Paralin Red instead of Cad Red Deep?
I haven't. I've never
You
used
haven't tried
I've seen it.
Paralin?
No, I've seen it, but I've
No?
not tried it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's my favorite red color. It's best way to describe it is like the color of blood.
Oh, okay.
It's just really deep, deep, deep red. Not too cold, not too warm. Just like I would say, a very primary red, like just balanced red, but very
Okay.
transparent.
Oh, it's transparent?
It's
Okay.
very transparent. Yeah, and if you mix it with, the darkest black I've ever been able to get is with that and phthalo blue green or green blue, whatever.
Yeah, that's how I get all my blacks. It's overlay of alizarin crimson with phthalo green.
So it doesn't go too cold for you when you use those two together?
So when I'm using black, like for this painting,
Yeah.
I want that black to be like void, just emptiness.
So the cold is what you want.
Exactly. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
works for me here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I rarely use that combination because it's cold and I'm
Yes.
not typically looking for that cold, but that makes sense. But I'll tell you this, it's weird, but my experience is if you pull out ultramarine looks darker than Paralin if you squeeze them out of the tube.
Okay.
Did I say ultramarine? Alizarin, I mean.
Okay. Yeah.
Alizarin crimson looks darker out of the tube than Parylene.
Uh-huh.
But for some reason, Parylene makes a darker black with
Really?
phthalo blue green. Yeah.
Oh,
I
then
don't know why. It's
yeah.
weird.
Okay, then I really want to try it.
Try it. And maybe it's just maybe I'm wrong, but that's been my experience. And a lot of it could come down to the brands too, right?
Right.
But yeah, but it's such a pretty color. Anyway, the reason I ask is because that's like one of the colors I would have grabbed for this. I wondered if you used it because these reds are just so beautiful.
Thank you. No, that's one of the enjoyments I get when I get a new fabric and I'm like, oh, I have the perfect, turquoise blue for that from this brand, and then it's a great match, and especially if it's like a really keyed up color, if I can just almost use it straight out of the tube, where it's like
So
really,
you want to maximize chroma. You don't want to mix these colors. You want to get them, if possible, fresh.
well, it depends on the fabric. Like if it's a really high chroma fabric, like it's a teal or turquoise, then it's like it's impossible to get that intense, color. So to maximize the chroma intensity, you wanna get that, the perfect possible. So nothing's diluting it, because once you start adding anything, it loses that potency. But this painting is very muted. The blues are muted, reds are muted. So I'm sure there was a lot of mixing going on here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just look at a couple more here. Man. So that's the same one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So where do you find your fabrics?
A lot of these like floral ones are from India.
No kidding. What do you get them on eBay or something?
They're from Etsy, a lot of them. Yeah.
A lot of them.
And initially, like the lace ones, those are from all over. I mean, I think I get them from this company in LA that has really beautiful selection of Venetian lace like that.
It's insanity. Oh my gosh, that is so much detail.
So this is a great example.
Like
the highest highlight, I want to use cadmium yellow light, like straight out of the tube, so I can have that crazy, intensity.
Right.
And then everything else is a little bit darker. That was a lot of fun. That, yellow and all the kind of cooler colors that come in the undercuts and the shadows.
Yeah, I was noticed they are leaning really green, which is really nice because it's still, the chroma of the shadows is still relatively rich.
Yeah.
Instead of coming purpley gray.
I think
it's really pretty.
I've been told, especially by my students when we're painting, I'm seeing more color. I'm probably stretching more colors. I think a lot of painters do that.
Oh, I do. Yeah. Copying color is never as good.
Exactly. So I'm constantly telling the students, like, don't you see that, that green or the purple? And they're like, no, it's gray. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But, when you're thinking about temperature with colors, like you have to almost like think it's like, it's cold. It's green, it's like this army green or it's purple. Although you're really looking at a yellow fabric the entire time.
Right. And the rule is, this is why I noticed this. And I'll tell you exactly why I noticed this, because right now, this is what I'm working on. And this is why I'm trying to channel you. This is a post I just did. So I'm working on this yellow fabric right here.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've made some of the same decisions or some similar decisions to what you've made where, oh, now I've lost your Instagram. Let me just get you back on here. There you are. In that a lot of times you just don't want to add purple to yellow to darken it because it's just going to go gray and dingy.
Yeah.
Even though that's what you see.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you kill those shadows, then the whole thing just goes dead.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, copying color, I've never found it very interesting. Man, some of my favorites. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think you know, talking, when someone asks me about my painting and how realistic they look, and I keep telling them like it's not exactly like, like we're talking about, we're not copying colors. I mean,
Mm-mm.
I am drawing that color. It was orange, it was green, it was yellow, but I'm actually making it slightly more colorful than the actual setup. And I'm like bumping up the colors a little bit. And I'm also bumping up the contrast as well. So it registers a little bit better, like a little quicker. And to me, that's how I make it. That's the feeling I get. It feels more real, than
Yeah.
a two-dimensional image of it. So the colors are always a little bit more accentuated, and same with the overall value, the contrast.
Isn't that where the art is? Because painting, in my opinion, is just a craft.
Yeah, yeah,
There's nothing painting and art are not synonymous. It's literally a craft. But until you start making creative decisions, that's all it'll ever be,
right.
in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Is there any that you are particularly proud of that you'd like to show off?
Oh,
I'll keep clicking through, just kind of, admiring and oogling at your work here.
I um I like the burlap and the fish.
This right here?
Net. Yeah, that's a drawing.
Really? This is just a drawing? Oh, yeah, it is a drawing. Look at that.
Yeah, it's drawing with on tan paper. It's like chipboard,
With what?
just black pencil.
Black graphite pencil?
I think it was.
Oh, no, Lumograph, that
Yeah,
Mars Lumograph pencil. Yeah, I don't know what that stuff is. I
it's
used that with graphite.
I've discovered it because I was looking for something really, really rich black, and graphite was too shiny. Charcoal was too smudgy, for my level of detail.
Mm-hmm.
And I just bought like every black pencil, and that one worked really well on this tone paper, to get the effect. Um,
And again, this tedious pattern. Oh my gosh.
but yeah, that's what I like to do.
Wow. Is it just sort of meditative? Is that what it is about it?
I, you know, I think it's that I need something that's going to be so absorbing that I like block out everything, like all those internal thoughts, like I can't do anything else. Like, because if something comes into my head besides what I'm actually doing, looking and, seeing and figuring things out, I will lose my concentration, right? I'll lose my place. I'll be like, oh, where's my flower? Where was that little curve?
Right.
And I think somehow lately with this body of work, like I really enjoy that intense concentration. It's there's nothing else that I do. I feel like anything else I do in my life, like I'm thinking about 10 other things at the same time.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you're washing.
No, I totally know what you
But
mean.
like you're thinking about your bills or like tomorrow's dinner or whatever, like what happened yesterday.
Maybe I need something like that. Because I took up archery a couple years ago, and I'm hardly pro at it. It's only been a couple years. So I really have to focus when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I was telling my wife that it's so relaxing. I love it because like the whole world, like I described it exactly the way you described painting. I can tune out the world.
Yeah.
But I can't remember the last time I felt that way with painting. Like while I'm painting, I always have everything else going on in my head. I'm thinking about all the things I'm stressed about, and I'm thinking about my kids. I'm thinking about it's like, so maybe that's what I need. Maybe I should start doing some crazy patterns like, or like start rendering pimples on people or something.
I think that's interesting. I think that's one of the reasons why I've kind of moved away, from, because, like from figure painting specifically, because when I was younger and when I was in school, I thought like I'm gonna make figures. I'm gonna make giant narrative paintings, with multi-figures,
Yeah.
kind of like stuff you do.
Yeah.
That was my goal, but painting it more like Sargent.
Right.
But I think whenever I was painting the figure, I would have those people in my mind. Like I would think about Sargent, I would think about Velasquez. Like, how would he do this? Like, how would he do that? And it was just filled with
Oh,
other
interesting.
artists, and their solutions, because that's how we learned it,
Because
right?
there's
Like,
such a history behind it.
exactly. Even now, like because I often do very quick sketches, of portraits of family or friends or even in class, and I'm like thinking like, this is the way so and so would resolve an eye, and I think about like that book. I think one of your guests mentioned it, The Art Spirit by Robert Henry.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole section on how to do the eye, like the dominant eye, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly thinking of that. Like I've never got to the point where like I had my own solution for eye, and maybe I'm thinking there's no unique solution for me for the eye, because I've seen all the best ones and there's so many examples of it, and um
That's so true.
yeah.
I totally go through that. And
I'm
especially
thinking like,
nowadays with Instagram,
yeah,
because everyone's doing such beautiful work out there. And
absolutely.
it's really hard to just stay focused on what it is you're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
So fabric somehow released you from that?
I think because everyone, yeah, there's a, like we were talking about with Sargent, there was a really great show that I missed. I only learned of it after, that was put together in London at the British Museum, called uh, Fabric of Vision. And the entire show it was put together by an art historian, American art historian, Anne Hollander. And she kind of chronicled like throughout the entire human history how clothing like shaped art, and like how it really became an important sort of um, indicator of what an artist accomplished, and what how it changed from like one movement to another. So there'll be examples of how um, Gothic sculptors would do drapery in a certain way, but then when they got really good, it started to look much more realistic, and that sort of thing. And of course, painters is the same, how we used to kind of have a formula for, like, if you look at Giotto's drapery on one of the religious paintings, they're very hard and almost geometric because they couldn't figure out how to make it flow yet.
Yeah.
You go to the Renaissance and it's like, oh, it's super flowy, and then we go to the Baroque and it's like super flowy with like dramatic lighting, like Caravaggio, and it's amazing. And then more and more, like further on, then we talk about like how we can be much more gestural and expressive, like Sargent. Like that was like the only time he could really express and be painterly, because you can't mess with the face,
Right. You got to get a
like
likeness.
very pretty.
Yeah.
But when it comes to ruffles and satins and ribbons, like he could just kind of like really do that Sargent-esque thing, with that brush mark. So I love that part, and I love that opportunity of, like, I know I'm not the first person to paint drapery in detail, but I can kind of come up with my own system, which is just kind of just looking at it and just doing it. And of course, coupled with the fact that I wanted to kind of play around with that deceptive trompe l'oeil effect of having that box, just kind of coming up with my own little niche, in the painting world. Yeah, so and every time I change fabric, I feel like, again, like I don't have a style, I don't, like, I've always envied people who have like a very particular hand or a style, and I don't have one. And I feel disingenuous when I'm painting a head, because I'm like trying to be like Sargent, so then I'm like, that's not me. I'm like, I'm trying to be like, forever trying to be like Sargent, and I can't seem to find an original voice. But when I literally remove that pressure of like not having anything, like, I have not seen a really great burlap painting. So when I look at burlap, and I also have like, some personal history and narrative with the burlap material, So I used to use it a lot with my dad when I was little, like making sculptures and as like a support system for backup plasters and stuff.
Oh, no way. Is it just me or the rest of you guys also get weirdly excited when you order new paint? Because I don't know about you, but when I get paint in the mail, it feels like Santa just dropped my Christmas presents off at my doorstep. With Vasari paint, my paint of choice and the podcast sponsor, it's even more exciting. And let me show you why. Because when Vasari shows up, it comes in this incredible box where each tube lays in this little compartment perfectly formed around the tube in this nice soft foam. And it's surrounded by velvet, red velvet. Now you got to ask yourself, if a paint comes so carefully protected and surrounded by red velvet, you got to wonder if this paint is worthy of royalty. It is. Vasari is. So if you haven't tried Vasari, you're seriously missing out. And the thing about Vasari, it's not only the best paint out there, it's also made by an incredible company that's been around for 30 years and knows its customer by name. Do yourself a favor, go to vasaricolors.com and order yourself some for your next painting.
Yeah. And so I'm looking at it and going like, well, like if you have to paint it or if you have to draw it, like how would you draw it? How would you break it down? Like, how would you deal with it? And if I do it on tan paper, like, can I get away with like just black on tan and make it really look like it's colored, but it's really not colored? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you did. I thought it was a painting before I clicked on it. We got to reduce it again to see. Yeah, it looks like a painting.
Yeah. So I've done that a few times where there's like I think a pink lace drawing, and I was using like a pink tone paper with a brown colored pencil. And I think if you don't look at it too closely, it looks like a pink lace, but it's really just.
Is that here in your?
I think so. It should.
Instagram. My gosh, you've got a lot of paintings.
A lot of them are quite small, so
Okay.
A lot of them are kind of just like easel size. There's only a few that I went larger, for a specific show.
Right. No, I don't. You got a couple of these burlap ones though.
I do. Yeah. I think the pink lace is probably up more recent.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Start from the top again. Yeah, I'm really curious about it. Is this another drawing here?
No, that's a painting.
See, you can't even. Is that a painting too?
Yeah, that's a painting.
Yeah, that's a painting. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And then every now and then, we'll just accidentally run into it. But every now and then, you do interesting stuff like this where you start to get. I guess you call it it's abstract, but it's more, how do you describe that? Symbol based, like.
Yeah, it's really borrowed from, East Asian art history, like
Okay.
Chinese, Korean. I'm Korean, so like Korean art and also Japanese Edo period. You'll find those beautiful kind of linear calligraphy, drawing skills in that time period, like around 14th, 15th century. This body of work, although it's still with ornate fabric, is a little bit older, where I went through a whole series of sort of Korean folklore and Korean mythology based work. So I was trying to combine my Western training in oil paint with some Eastern art history reference, and that became the combination of what you're seeing.
That's awesome.
Well,
I like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been a blast. I'm glad to get to know you and stuff and learn a little bit about your process and your paintings.
For having me on. I'm just honored. Yeah. You have such an amazing roster of artists on your catalog there, so it's
I've been really lucky to talk to all of you guys.
There's so many to choose from.
Oh, there are. It's crazy. I can hardly believe you'll be like 111. I think I can hardly believe it.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, you're one of them. You're one of the great painters out there. So it's an honor to have you on there. But before I say goodbye, I got to ask you my final question.
Yeah.
And That is, if you had one piece of advice for an aspiring artist, what would that be?
Give yourself that thing of like the time and the luxury. Like it could be that expensive paint, you know, or that linen that you've been eyeing, or that brush that you want. I think I regret a lot of decisions I made where I felt like I couldn't, like I don't deserve it, like I can't afford it, I can't, you know, it's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that mentality never goes away if you don't break away from it. So even though I can afford those things, I still feel like I still shop like I'm 19 and I'm an undergrad. But I think it's great when, you know, a young person says like, look what I got. I spent $23 on this brush and I'm going to make this amazing painting, and the excitement. And I'm like, yeah, you deserve that. You know, like go for it. So whether it's a small thing or like building yourself the biggest studio, maybe it's even beyond your means. I heard you talk about building studios with somebody else, and, you know, it's like, I constantly think like I should have gone bigger. You know, I should have taken out a little extra money and, you know, like a little bigger loan and done something larger. But so I would say that like you deserve it. Like go for it.
That's great advice. Yeah. What is that? Parks and Rec? That Parks and Rec reference? Treat yourself or treat yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's again great to have you. It's been an awesome
Thank you. It's been an
opportunity to get to know you.
A lot of fun. Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.